Hi to all of our viewers and listeners. We are continuing with Practica Talks, our second video blog, where we try to bring the hottest news from tech ecosystem in the Baltics and also from our portfolio, definitely. And more so, not to even discuss the happenings themselves, but rather to give you some insights on the background, backstage happenings, and also our intention is to build some foundations for the knowledge, at least identify some of the patterns between like fundraisings or reported events and what does it mean to help you to kind of apply it to your own startups, to your own everyday business, or just get inspired by this. So, of course, today's topic is the PVK Series A. And rather than the milestone itself, focusing on A round and what it means, let's focus rather more on how the company started, how it developed, and how it got to the stage where it was able to raise one of the largest fundraisings in Series A fundraisings in the Baltics and definitely Lithuania, but also in the solar software industry in Europe. So let's start off with introducing our today's guests. First of all, it's David, the CEO and co-founder of PVcase, and Douglas, CCO or commercial officer, co-founder also at PVcase. Hi, gentlemen.
Hello. Hi, everyone.
Perfect. So good to see you. Happy that you found the time in your busy schedule to join us. And also today with us is Peter Fallon, general partner at Elephant VC. And Elephant is the lead investor at PVcase Series A. Hi, Peter.
Hi, everyone. Great to be here.
Yeah, perfect. I think this is the idea was to gather kind of different insights and from different perspective or different viewpoints, right? So kind of to focus a bit on the founder journey, complemented by myself kind of working as early investor, and then also Peter joining as a new investor at a very, very significant stage of the company's development, and his views on why and why he decided to invest, and secondly, what's so important going forward. And maybe we can hear from Peter a bit on how Lithuanian or Baltic startups benchmark with, let's say, global startups. And that would be amazing. So before we dig in to the topic, I think it's David and Doug is more known to the ecosystem. So why don't we focus on Peter for a second and Elephant, and maybe Peter, you can share with us a bit on Elephant's investment philosophy. What is your fund? Where you focus on? Are you strange into Europe? Was it your first deal? And all of these small points that you cannot read on your website or on any Crunchbase.
No, sounds great. Thanks, Arvidas, for the intro, and great to be here, David and Doug. Great to see you again over video, and hope to see you soon in person. So as Arvidas mentioned, I'm a general partner at Elephant. We started our firm 5 or 6 years ago now. A couple of partners of mine and myself used to be investors at a different firm, left to raise our own fund. We've since raised 4 funds, in total about 1.5, 1.6 billion US dollars. Most recently, we closed our 4th fund. It was a $600 million fund, which we closed earlier this summer, so just a few months ago. And actually, PVcase is the first investment out of that fund. Logistically speaking, what we do is we make investments ranging from $5 or $10 million upwards of 50, 60, 70 or more million dollars of equity into what we consider very unique businesses. So these are software and internet businesses based all over the world. I'm in New York. We have an office in Boston, but we invest all over. About 50% of our portfolio are companies based outside the US, whether that be Australia, Israel, Europe, Lithuania, obviously Canada, and then certainly all across the US. What these businesses have in common is they're growing very quickly, but I think the unique part is that they're doing so very capital efficiently. They tend to have not raised much, if any, outside capital before. Sometimes they have great seed investors like Practica and others, but for the most part, they've gone about funding their business the old-fashioned way by finding customers, having product market fit. And for whatever reason, they're thinking about bringing on a partner, and that can be for M&A opportunities they're evaluating. It could be for geographic expansion. It could be to just go a little bit faster on hiring. Really, the reasons reasons vary, but I think what the businesses have in common is they don't need the money to survive. They're doing great, they're growing fast, and they're doing so profitably often, or at least close to it. So PVcase is a great example of the perfect kind of profile of business for us. David and Doug and Arvidas will I'm sure get into the background, but it's just an amazing growth story, an amazing capital efficient growth story, which is uniquely special from our perspective, and we're very grateful to be involved here.
Thank you, Peter. I never knew that it was your first investment from a new fund, because PVcase was the first investment from our second fund also. So I think we're off to a good start here.
Yeah, we're off to a great start.
We like being first.
Yeah. Okay. And I think, Peter, if you can also tell a bit to our Baltic audience how is the best to contact you. Are you approachable on LinkedIn? A better email? How is the best way to contact Elephant?
Yeah, we're always open to be contacted. So please feel free to reach out directly over email. My email is peter@elephantvc.com. I'm accessible on LinkedIn as well, although probably a little bit less responsive there. And we're grateful to anyone who decides to reach out to us thinking we might be a good fit, or at least a sounding board.
Okay, perfect. So probably, very, very important, because VCs are getting closer and closer to the ecosystem, more and more barriers to reach kind of venture capital or the funding source, most definitely. But let's probably jump to the main discussion of today's, and that being kind of PVcase success so far and what it means for the future. And I think we are generally dividing this into three parts. So one part is kind of backward looking, focusing on let's say 0 to 1 narrative, right? So how PVcase went from 0 to 1. Second would be, of course, we have to zoom in on the A round itself and what does it mean, a bit of how the process went and so on. And the third part is, I think, where we will try to highlight one of those critical areas or critical framework that David and Doug and all the PVcase team was implementing, or how it was set up, that it led to such a success, and it's continuing the success, right? So these three big parts, and let's jump off from 0 to 1 story or the narrative itself. And kind of if David and Doug, if we can start with you, and kind of, I think PVcase, when you approached us, it was, I think, 2018, summer of 2018, or spring or late spring of 2018, right? And it was pre-revenue, pre-product, but it was built on David's kind of very in-depth expertise on the field. So domain expertise was not a question, right? And we approached this with this, okay, actually there is a clearly identified opportunity to disrupt and to build a dominant software play in utility scale solar park design tool. And by just naming this, it sounds niche, right? It doesn't sound like it's a 100 billion market opportunity, right? And this is the reason that no one saw it coming. Like no one, even when we were drawing this on the whiteboard and thinking about how many solar engineers there are, what kind of TAM to build, and so on, it doesn't look like it is going to be definitely unicorn, right? But it looks like this is very good start in a very small niche market that is in many cases overlooked, right? And it's like you read all this 0 to 1 lean startup and so on, and they all claim start with a niche, right? So that's kind of what you did. So if we can open up a discussion here on how did you start, because you were 3 co-founders, several early employees, right? And kind of everyone had to forgo their corporate job. So can you tell a bit of this, how you decided to jump on this venture? And kind of it was not like you were not entrepreneurs before, and kind of what did it mean to jump into this, and also what did it mean, what kind of commitment to one another you gave in the very beginning?
That's really good question. It's always, I remember it was definitely spring 2018, and we met probably not even thinking that we'll be raising the money, maybe more on the consulting side, like what would be the best. So at that point, I was running my consulting business, and PVcase was not even the code name at that point. It was a bit different, but we used that beginning of that software. We used in-house because we've been trying to look for certain products on the market and we couldn't find it. So that's why we decided to create on our own. But then many of our clients started asking if you can sell the product, can you do a demo? And this was the maybe a seed in my brain about doing this as a separate revenue stream or even company. I met you, Arudas, I think in spring. We started chatting about this, and I think I realized that funding this product or this new company from my own capital would be a slow process and will take a lot of time. And solar was booming, is still booming now, so we need to move fast to tackle the market. Before I was as Doug as well, we've been growing like organic businesses. So for us, this VC game was not, let's say, not in favor at that point. We had different ideas how to build business, but I think having this extra capital coming from outside, it gives a bit different perspective how you think about building business, how, let's say, how aggressive you can go, what kind of people you're hiring. So it's different, totally different mindset. At least that was my feel in the beginning.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think it was a really big mind change to kind of look at things and say, we have this safety cushion. I mean, ultimately, it was really that cushion to say we can take a little bit more risk than we've been used to taking, kind of making sure that we were running lean businesses in the past with bootstrapping type of mentality. Here, it really gave us the opportunity to say, let's hire more than we think we're going to need. And in fact, that was definitely the right decision. And I think we've kind of kept growing with that same mentality of hire more than we need, which has become a significant challenge to continue to grow the company as fast as we would like with the restraints of ultimately hiring. But I think the decision, my coming on with the company was a very interesting, if we're getting back to that portion of the conversation. But Davidus had been pursuing me for a number of years. We've been friends very strangely through Instagram. So thank you very much to Instagram for that. Worked out really well for us as we close the 20 million around here. But it's we became very good friends, and kind of constantly we're talking about business, my business, his business, and he of course was try to get me to come and run a sales organization, as my background is essentially in retail banking in the US, and building sales teams or managing sales teams, consulting with them. And so always kind of wanting me to push consulting services. And I'm actually going to quote Practica, consulting isn't sexy. SaaS is sexy, right? And so I think it was at the time when Davidus said, we have this in-house tool that we'd like to, maybe bring to the market. I really think there's really good need for it. Users in-house love it, and some of our customers are starting to ask about it. And he said, why don't you check it out? Why don't you just look at it? I'm like, what am I going to look at? I don't know how to design a solar park. So he sat me down with one of his engineers and had me design a solar park the old school way. And then after 3 hours, we gave up. And in 10 minutes of PVcase, we had a solar park. And I said, SaaS is sexy. Software is let's do this. So, part of the other question you had was like, kind of leaving the corporate job. And, I had kind of been running like a kind of operating almost as like a consultant at the time for this retail banking in the US, and, living in Lithuania at the time and making a decision to say, moving out of that, US salary, US compensation, moving into a startup in Lithuania, kind of bootstrapping my life again, with a wife and a daughter, and shortly thereafter another one on the way. Was exciting, stressful, but as I said, SaaS was sexy, and I saw a huge opportunity for it because not knowing anything about the solar space, you could see that this was solving a major pain point. And I became a very quick believer in it, and that's when we kind of got in. And I remember very clearly that first whiteboard session in your guys' boardroom and looking at that and looking at the numbers up there going, man, is this going to be possible? Can we do this? And yeah, I mean, here we are 3 years later, almost exactly 3 years later from that whiteboard session. And I remember very clearly 50 million was the number on the board. And here we are, more than twice that at this point. And so super exciting time. Really grateful for kind of pushing along the way and providing us certainly the financial cushion to be able to feel comfortable about it.
Yeah, Doug, that's good, David. Doug, it's a great story because I remember in the early days, and I think that's also resonates with what Peter said, right? You were not considering funding just to survive, right, or pay salaries. You were really you had to find your own personal motivation to go in the business first of all and decline the steady, safe kind of environment, and then getting money was more like. Where you could spend it more wisely rather than just for you to make the decision, right? Validated by external investors and so on. So that is great. And also I remember when we were talking with David, and Adam was there, the other co-founder, that we were showing the product, and then who's gonna sell this? And David, I had this US guy called Doug. He's good. And I'm like, what did he do before? He was selling mortgages over the phone and running 200 people. I'm like, I couldn't tell to David, but I was like, this is it. This is the best guy. Selling mortgages over phone. This is what we need to do. Bring him on board.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Doug was also doing that from Lithuania, I believe, into the US. So different hours and with young kids, that's not easy.
Yeah, that's definitely not easy. Yeah. So, and boy, oh boy, did Doug build a machine out of this. So maybe let's jump to this other topic of David. Can you explain, 0 to 1? I don't want this to be very numeric, so to say 20 million raised. This is not a success, but PVcase has definitely achieved amazing footprint in solar industry and beyond. So maybe you could share some what it meant to you and what it meant to your team to be at this stage, at this point.
I think for me the most memorable, let's say, were like three times for all these 3 years, let's say. So one being at SPI event 2 years ago, meeting one development team, solar developers from Texas, saying that they designed a solar plant the size of 1 gigawatt. So that's a 1 billion euro asset designed with PVcase. So for me, it was like, wow, we are in the big game. So that was the first one. Then the second one, speaking with the decision makers and these big corporations we work with, and them explaining us how they standardized the design processes globally. So we have clients that are based in Germany, but they have subsidiaries in South Korea, Japan, US, and all over the globe. And they said, because of the PVcase, we can standardize all the processes and all the designs we do globally. And they show this 200 something pages manual how to design utility scale solar power plants using PVcase, and it's like printed document. So that was the second one. And the third one was we are hiring abroad now in Lithuania and outside. So we always check what's available, what kind of job ads are in the markets. And we in Denmark, in Germany, and in Spain, we saw some job ads where one of the requirements of PV engineers is to know how to use PVcase. So for me, all these free topics are like, wow, this is the big achievement. Of course, we have these big names, big logos, big project, but for me personally, that's more important.
Yeah, and I would just maybe interject if it's okay, Arvidas, right? I think what David didn't go out and say this, but it's an obsession with the customer that I think is very unique here, right? I think over the past 3 years since you met them and invested in their business originally, right? I'm sure there were many times that they could have raised capital or done things that perhaps would have created some external validation or even some financial gain to the founders and to the shareholders the business, but they've largely kind of turned that down, I guess kind of until now, in order to really just be obsessed with the customer. And that comes across when we were doing diligence, speaking to folks. When you look at the retention metrics of the business, that the data points to it. And I think that kind of customer obsession is really unique here. And I think that's what the shared DNA between PVcase and what we view as kind of the best software businesses out there, is just kind of a relentless focus on the customer, and then everything else takes care of itself.
Yeah.
Well said.
Yeah, well said. Really, that's a good ad, because you very good point to you have to build something great and irreplaceable for your customer base to scale. I mean, it's textbook knowledge, right? But when you see it in reality, you can clearly see it. Like, you cannot hide it. Like, you can really understand that, okay, this is something that is working, because the customers, they cannot live without the product, right? And I think this is what's become of PVcase right now in the design, a solar design industry, solar park utility scale design industry. Like, you cannot do it without PVcase.
Yes.
Here we are. And Peter, maybe before we switch again to the founders, what's the first point that made you interested in PVcase? Because SaaS, a headline, what kind of got you thinking that, okay, this can be interesting?
Yeah, I think what we look for are businesses based anywhere, right? I think one of our fundamental views is that great businesses can be built anywhere. Lithuania, Israel, Australia, and anywhere else, right? there are amazing companies coming from everywhere. So I think geography had little role in it. I would say that the customer obsession that David and Doug have alluded to, and we also just touched on, is a big driver from our perspective around what gets us excited. And really what we're looking for is the ability to be partners with the team for 5 to 10 to more years, right? So a long-term horizon in a business that could be the category leader and can really win the market and define the market. And I think that's what this is a great example of, right? I think it's the de facto solution in this category. We think that the business has the ability to grow very rapidly and capital efficiently for the next decade, and really be the winning business, not another kind of competitor amongst a sea of them, right? But kind of the defining business of the category. And the team, I think, is a special one too. David and Doug won't, I think, say this because they're humble guys and women on the team, but there've been a number of times when we were doing diligence and since we closed our investment, that they got on the phone at 1 or 2 or I think 3 a.m. Lithuanian time, right? And it's just kind of an obsession with building the company, an obsession with satisfying customers that I think is super rare here. And when you speak to other folks on the team, whether it be Toma or Adam or anyone else, I think that comes across. So I think it's a unique combination of awesome team, great growing market, and the ability that's rare to build the defining business of the category.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. It's exactly, very well articulated. One thing is to be self-proclaimed kind of leader, right? You think that you're doing so good, but of course, getting external validation and probably shifting a bit to our second part of discussion about Series A, right? Because it is a milestone. It is a very important milestone, very important validation, because it's a tipping point, if you will, right, for the company. More so when global investors like Elephant is participating. It means that there is still double-digit kind of growth opportunities, probably in most cases, theoretically even applying unicorn status, raising round for top investors at the end, sizable significant round. And of course, it's talk about pressure, right? Talk about expectations and pressure, which we soon are going to show.
None of that.
Yeah, none of that. Yeah. So definitely PVcase has passed this filter, right? So I know that there are not many details disclosed about revenue and so on, but it's definitely growing four times per year for the past 3 years. It's great business. It's negative churn. All the metrics, kind of all the optics that SaaS investors are jaw dripping and kind of looking like bees at honey. Like it's like crazy good business. And definitely passing this milestone, PVcase proved that there's enough conviction around core KPIs for kind of large enough prize at the end of building a business, right? And I think let's zoom in on this. What is PVcase after Series A? What is your new ambition, David Duck? Could you share with us what opportunities will you go after this round, and what you'd like to achieve?
Mm. I think for the with this growth for the past 3 years, we've been focusing on the business itself, like growing the business. But in the back of our minds, we had these crazy ideas how to, build more products, how to build bigger team. And I think after Series A, that will enable us to do so. So financially, we can open, bigger offices now in Germany, Spain, and US. That we started to do so. Hire more people, build more products. So coming back quickly on that Arvidas office whiteboard, when we've been drawing that TAM map with 50 or whenever a million TAM, I think at that point we've been focusing on one product, where now we have a product line and a platform play. So it's totally different aspect. The current TAM is actually clients, so solar design engineers, where the future TAM is projects that are being built or megawatts being installed. So it changed our mindset. I think we grew as a team. We outgrew the current product mindset, let's say, and we grew to this target to become a biggest platform player in the solar industry.
Okay, this is a big ambition, right? Maybe Peter, I can ask you also to complement the views on the what lies ahead for PVcase and what are the challenges, main challenges, because probably you've seen more later stage companies and also kind of building this ecosystem play that PVcase is after. Also, how you think the looking for the future of PVcase? What is the most kind of not obvious thing that everyone will not think about?
Yeah, I think I think Arvidas, when you were describing the Series A, you referred to it as a milestone, right? And I think that's right. It's a milestone. It's not an outcome. So I think we feel very strongly that the next 5 to 10 years, hopefully 10 of PVcase are way more exciting than the previous 3. And I think what David and Doug are kind of painting the vision of is are a number of products, a number of offerings serving kind of this customer segment in a variety of different ways, which is just an expansion beyond kind of where we are today. And really what the Series A provides are perhaps resources to accelerate some of that, whether it be through hiring or geographic expansion or product development or M&A even. But it doesn't kind of change the fundamentals of the business and the team that's executing on it. So in our view, it's more of the same. Really exciting times ahead. Certainly, perhaps there's some increased pressure, but in our opinion, kind of running the business as it's been run is a great way to continue things. Things were going great before we got involved, and we hope that they continue to go great since we've got involved. So it's just really exciting for the next, hopefully a long time. And I think David and Doug's kind of going back to the obsession with the customer is going to serve us really well there, right? I think no one's going to give us kind of a better indication of what they want than people that we're already servicing with our product today, right? I think getting customer feedback, hearing what they would like us to work on, and then taking that back to the group and deciding kind of where to allocate resources is going to be very useful for us. So, long-winded way of saying I'd love that. I think that the goal here is to kind of continue to build products and solutions for our customer base and perhaps other customer bases but we're going to be getting feedback from the customers in order to help us with that roadmap. In terms of where we see the challenges, I think oftentimes kind of leading up to the Series A or like an initial growth round, which I think this is more akin to in many ways, just given kind of the stage of the business and the traction that it had before we even got involved. I think prior to that type of round occurring, that the founders, David, Doug, Toma, Adam, others, tend to be like the doers in the business, the people executing things, talking to every customer, really like putting down the product roadmap on a whiteboard, making the sales. I think the challenge for any company, and us included, is going to be, how do we scale the organization to the point where David and Doug get to be a little bit more strategic and less kind of in the weeds in terms of like getting a sale done, just as an example, right? There'll certainly be situations where that needs to happen or customers expect it, but transitioning the business from where the founders are doing everything to where the team does most and the founders kind of step in and provide perspective where needed is an interesting evolution. And I think that's the challenge and the opportunity for this business.
Yeah, I think that's.
I would agree with you 100% that is exactly where I feel like we are at this point. We were just discussing it earlier today. This transition of mindset that happened when we raised the initial round of, okay, we can be a little bit more risky, to now also kind of we can be a little bit more risky, but that risk isn't so much about having the financial backing. It's really about this perspective of, we have this like responsibility and this obligation to kind of push the company further, not through doing, but through having that strategic perspective and letting go of some of that day-to-day, being on every call, trying to close every call. At least from my perspective, that is I would say one of the big challenges is that, sales is a love, it's a passion for me at least. And so kind of being able to celebrate the victories with the team and kind of be there to kind of push the strategy of the team while not being 100% involved is the stage that I'd say we're definitely in at this point.
But if we can zoom in on this topic a bit, I know we probably I was thinking to go a bit later into this, but as it's a very good point that Peter touched, and kind of Doug, you also picked up, right? So PVcase, if you will, put this framework into your mind. PVcase is building organization that is building leading software products in solar and sustainability industry, right? Right now, it's easy for me kind of to reflect on this, especially after hearing Peter's remark and kind of raising successful Series A, the company raising successful Series A. But David and Doug, you were, I think, from the very beginning, you were operating in this mindset that David was thinking more how to build this machine, how to build this organization, purposely leaving a bit of headspace for himself to kind of think how everything should be working on team organizational side, and Doug being kind of very, very concentrated on business, delivery, clients, and so on. And then also David growing the team, Doug kind of looking after business. Was it intentional? Like, guys, how did you manage? Were you kind of thinking about this, or it just happened? Because it looks like this is the secret for any company.
I think you shared maybe some articles like recently about it, and I was surprised that we came to this point without realizing, like in a natural way. I had this idea that, and I think I managed to implement that each manager, let's say if it's on the product side or operations or sales or commercial, they are running kind of their own startups in a company, and they are kind of independent, I would say. So they can do their own stuff there. They can make their own decisions and grow the teams. So this then gives us as a managers a bit more time to think strategically and manage that from the top. So I think that was a good decision and played pretty well, because then each of the manager, even in the lower levels, they are responsible for their work. They can make decisions. They excited about business and seeing how we are growing. They also growing with us, so everyone is excited. So I think we managed to build this exciting team in house, and everyone's super passionate about it.
Yeah, I'd only. Oh, go ahead, Doug.
Well, I just wanted to add to that I think when it was the three of us, it was myself, David, and Adam sitting in a co-working space. Like we kind of all knew what we were each like. We knew what we were each responsible for ultimately trying to achieve, and there was like our weekly updates were kind of very informal, just like if things are going well, yes, great, keep doing what you're doing. And there was a trust, right? That you trusted that the other person was doing the thing that they were supposed to be focusing on. And Adam was super focused and really, really delivering like a product that was focused on the customer and what the customer ultimately needed. And I was focused on having the customer on what are you going to be willing to pay us for this thing that is solving your need, right? And kind of pushing that conversation. And David is pushing the conversations with investors saying, we've got this great product. Why don't you give us some money to help us build it? And so like we all just kind of had that thing that we were ultimately focused on. And I think as we started to expand the team and ultimately look to hire, there was this desire to not micromanage and to not really to kind of manage without having to manage, essentially, is kind of like the strategy that I would say is you make sure you're hiring the right people, that they understand the company and the corporate direction. They understand where the company is ultimately going and where they fit into that organization and what they're responsible for doing. And then you come to work the next day and you just do it because that's what you were hired for. And we believe that we hired the right people to do so. And I would say that kind of building a team where that everybody just does what they're supposed to do. They've got guidance, they've got support. They can come and ask any question that they ultimately want at any particular point in time. But once they understand that they've been onboarded and they know what their position is, there's not much that has to be looked over and overseen and to use a babysat, right? Like that's not how we ultimately have gotten where we are today, and it's not what we wanted to be doing, moving forward at this point. So it's trusting in ourselves and in one another and in the team that we've built is it's kind of like the mainstay of our success, and it's the only way we see ourselves moving forward.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and I'd only add, I think that was well said, Doug. I think outside looking in during our relatively recent diligence process and getting to work with David and Doug and the team over the last couple months since we've closed it, right? I think it's amazing the bar they have for hiring new people, right? I think sometimes it might even frustrate some folks in HR, but the bar has remained high despite growing to 70-ish employees today. And I think the investments they've made in HR itself, just from a headcount perspective, are unique for this style of business, right? The investments they've made in recruiting, and HR led by Toma on the team are really special. And the only other thing I'd add, just in terms of perhaps creating a culture of accountability, is just the transparency that exists within the organization. David and Doug publish a bi-weekly update that is viewed by the whole group around key learnings, key challenges, key wins that have happened over the last couple of weeks. It allows, I think, sales to know what marketing's working on and to have visibility into product and support. And I think it breaks down the walls that might exist between organizations and create organizations within the company and creates kind of a shared sense of maybe purpose and wins for the group to hang on to. So I think that's also unique relative to what we've seen in other businesses, right? I think that it's easy in many ways for management to be closed off and not share metrics with the team and to kind of hold data to themselves. And I think the opposite culture has been created at the company. And I'd encourage everyone to realize that that's special and continue to invest in it.
I think it's some very profound learnings we have shared today. Thank you for this. And right now we kind of speak PVcase going from 0 to 1, expanding from engineers, solar engineers, right, designing solar parks to having ambition to go after every gigawatt installed, being constructed and being maintained, right? It's just like expansion. Then kind of cultural organization that is scalable in terms of structure, workflows on inside that can build, capture new talent and so on. But I think, Peter, I don't know if you know this, I hope you do, because we're gonna touch this other point that, okay, 2021 mid, right? PVcase raised 20 mil Series A, amazing, right? But in the 2020, end of 2020, beginning of 2021, coming back to this point about 50 million euro TAM, right? That was drawn on the whiteboard that we really believed in, and I remember.
Don't tell me this.
Yeah, no, yeah. So we in 2018, it was very clear how the Peter, for you probably to share a bit, right? How David and Doug and Adam were like, we're gonna build this business up to 50 million. We know how to do this, and this is it, right? And I remember at the end of the year, we were like discussing, we have arrived, right? This is it. We have arrived. We are there. We are enjoying this, but kind of David, Doug, you discovered this new ambition. Okay, not discovered, you rediscovered it, right? You kind of step back, look at it again, and then said, we are not having a maximum outcome. We are not here kind of to do this. Can you also share this change of mentality? Like what really drove you after to kind of commit another 3 or 4 years of your hard work to the building the company?
You want to start?
I can start. I mean, so, I would say our earlier successes, we kind of touched on, David has mentioned earlier, kind of like 3 big memorable moments that he remembered. One of the first ones that I remembered, and probably one of the more memorable ones we were joking around about the other day, was when our biggest customer was also one of our earliest customers. And I'll never forget, we kind of came to the agreement. They said, we're going to, we want to pay it on a monthly basis. And so we kind of sent them out like a preliminary invoice kind of showing what they're contracting for. And then we're sitting at like a Christmas party in a co-working space. And all 3 of us kind of have like our phones vibrate at the same time. And I don't remember if it was New Year's Eve or the day before New Year's Eve or something.
Christmas Eve.
Christmas Eve.
Yeah, hot wine.
Sitting around with blue wine and all of our phones kind of ring. And then I open it up and it's a notification from our local bank here in Lithuania. And there's this deposit in the account. And it was like the first deposit that we got from a customer. And they decided to, instead of paying us monthly, they paid for the whole year. And it was like, what? It's happening, right? Like it's happening. And it was just this really amazing, like feeling and validation, like going into like, of course, Christmas, like this really good feeling. We're having a good time. And then that happened. So that was like one of them. But then kind of we've had like most of our successes, our big successes with customers have really been in Europe because that's where we kind of really got started. But we've been making more and more headway into the US, which for me, being that that's where I'm from, it was really like nice to see that we're getting this traction there. And then the beginning part of the year, we signed a couple of big deals in the US, like really big deals where we're challenging now. Like our biggest companies in Europe are now being challenged by the biggest companies in Europe. And again, we're seeing this same concept of putting in place and standardizing all of this company's processes and procedures around PVcase and saying, there's so much more we can be doing, right? Like these companies are coming to us and saying, you know what, we don't even need to validate the product anymore. We tried it for like 2 weeks. We want it. We're going to put 40 of our engineers on it and let's sign a multi-year contract. And it's kind of like that kind of validation gives me this like belief that they're believing in us so much in this existing product, and they hear about the other products we want to do, and they want in on that also, that there's just so much more room that we could take this. There's so many more opportunities for us to be able to get into and so much more value that we can continue to deliver to these customers that we're dedicated to ultimately being able to help with this transition globally to green energy. And I think that that's really where, for me, I powered up, right? It's kind of like video game. I'm powered up, ready to go again, right? More sleepless nights for another 3 years.
Good. I thought maybe it was some potion that you can share the recipe with all of us, but no, it's money in bank account.
It's the secret sauce.
Secret sauce, exactly. Okay, yeah, this is very, very kind of inspiring in that sense, right? After this, I know that after you kind of came back, this is not enough. You kind of, it was not that you straight started fundraising. It was never the plan, right? David, could you share a bit how this fundraising process went, and what are your learnings, and if there's anything you could recommend to our fellow founders that are listening to this video.
Yeah, that's for sure. I think we kind of put together the budget for this year, confirmed that with all the growth numbers and so on. And there was never a plan to fundraise, but then I think it was like a late spring of this year, or maybe starting of the summer. I've been approached many times by different VCs, and out of this, I'm always consulting if it's worth speaking with them or not. And you're like, yeah, you don't need it. You don't need it. Because we've been cash flow positive after 6 months of operations, I think, after we got the investment. So we never 3 months, but even better. So
you got to put that out there. Sales was cranking early on, right? Like, yeah.
So it was a good growth. We kind of had everything in place, all the budget, all the plans, but with this new vision, we thought that we can move faster, we can do more. And I think everything started with somebody introducing us with one of the top VCs in Europe, just to speak about the market, about the energy, because they've been related to energy. So we spoke with them. They've been really interested, was chasing us a lot through all the channels available, WhatsApp, LinkedIn, everywhere. We had several other conversations with them, and they straight away, they said, like, we see the value, we want to invest in this business. Would you consider us? So I think we sat down together with the management team, thought about this, maybe restructured how we can grow, and then thought maybe it's a good idea. Let's explore this a bit more and speak with more VCs just to see what's available. One of them are focusing in energy, another one's maybe purely in solar, other ones in B2B SaaS enterprise solutions. So it was really interesting, and it was like a snowball effect. It went so fast, and somebody knew that we are kind of starting this conversation. I've got so much inbound from all those top VCs, but the key learning for me was that most of them were really niche, so they can't help a lot, let's say, in this solar space. They kind of, most of them understand maybe a bit, and all those VCs are pretty similar. So what we've been looking for is not help per se for those VCs, but more similar mindset about the company culture, growth, and potential that we have. And I think that's where it was a good match with Elephant guys and Peter, especially, that they like companies that are generating profit, growing in a fast but sustainable way, that building the products or companies that are niche and leaders in the industry. And I think this is where we clicked, right? It was a good sign. So I think we had maybe 20 different VCs we've been speaking at the same time. In terms of the timeline, maybe a few months or so, 5-6 calls to each of them, I guess, and a bit more intense with the pre-due diligence process and validation and so on. I really liked Elephant's approach on due diligence itself, because they really cared about culture we have and team. So they wanted to meet most of the team members. Then they spoke with our clients. So was doing a good background check on us in a good way. So really appreciate that.
Yeah, and I can really concur to what David said. Peter and Elephant was kind of exceptionally handled process, and also very, very different approach. Probably also because honestly, it was we never expected US to be so close, US VCs to be so close. Like I'm here in a kind of Patagonia, vest, looking like trying to look like US VC, right? And Peter is actually on the call with us already after a deal. US is so close, so maybe Peter, you can also reflect on these points. Kind of how is this happening that you are kind of so close to even Lithuania and also made a deal already? Is there a pattern that is changing? How was the process from your side?
Yeah, well, I think quickly, the world's gotten more global, and there are countless examples of awesome big businesses in technology, in particular, being built everywhere. And we think that PVcase is going to be another one that adds to that list. I think to be clear, right, we think of ourselves as maybe supporting cast members of the story, right? So it's really about the management team and the broader team within PVcase and what they've been able to execute. It's no surprise that there were a number of really interesting firms, right? I think who were interested, I think if you were to benchmark PVcase's metrics, just looking at it from that perspective against other software businesses that we've seen and we know others have looked at over the years, right? I think it's in the top percent, just to be clear, in terms of growth and capital efficiency and retention and customer satisfaction, whatever other metrics we want to mention. So we don't think of PVcase as a Lithuanian business. I think it's where the company's headquartered. It's where a majority of the team is, but we think it has the chance to be a global success, and we're happy and we're excited to kind of participate along the way. But this is a story about David and Doug and the team they've built and the customers they serve, much more than it is about a fundraising event. I think this business is going to be successful. Certainly we want to help where we can, in whatever capacity that might be, but we back the team and they're going to be the ones who make it successful.
I think exactly that they're very kind of good points to zoom in on the approach that we also learned a lot, as we see from you, Peter, and Elephant, is like articulate more that investors are there not to dictate, not to kind of abuse the company, but to help and be the kind of resource that founders can pull some value from, rather than be the ones that are showing the path of growth. Even though Doug and David, you remember how we said 2 times growth is not enough, right? Let's do 4.
Remember that conversation very clearly.
Yeah, so now we can enjoy 4 times growth for third year in a row, right? It's great. Yeah.
It's easy. It's easy to say though, right? Arvidas, we can say 4 times growth is great, and then say David and Doug go figure out how to do it.
Yeah, because
exactly what he said. That's exactly.
We have very easy jobs.
Guys, 2 times growth. You guys could do 3 times growth, and you look at each other. All right, we'll try. But what about 4 times growth?
Yeah, because I just I think there was one Lithuanian COO coming from his journey from running several US startups to Lithuania, and he was preaching that we do the model, Series A before the 4-4-3. So first time 4, second time 4, next time 3 years, 3x growth per year. And I was like so convinced, and I came to the meeting with this very serious face impression. Like, I know exactly it has to be like this. And Doug delivered to the exactly 4x, right?
Almost to the decimal point, right? It was.
Yeah. It was, why not 5 now? I wonder why should it be 5? Yeah, exactly. And maybe Doug, could you also explain how it was raising around and running a business, right? Because it took your focus very, very much, both of yours for sure, away from day-to-day operations. Having set up operational kind of culture and workflows, it definitely helped. But also, how was it from really every day? How did it look, this fundraising, and how was you kind of away from the business?
So I think it was actually we had we closed this round some time ago, but kind of only announced it just recently. And that whole time we kind of kept this really under wraps with everybody here at the company. And it was kind of like I kind of slowly stepped back out of some of the day-to-day operations that I had been involved in, so that I could be more involved in the conversations with the VCs. And I would say, just stepping back to kind of like a suggestion, or like one of the things that I learned is that I think it's really valuable to, as a founder, be able to speak to not just the VCs, but also the other companies that they invested in, and talk to them about how that is, but also the companies that they didn't invest in, and to learn why they didn't invest in, or why the company perhaps chose not to accept the investment from them, was also really enlightening. And I think if as a founder you have the opportunity to do that, I think it says good things about the VC being willing to share that information to you, that you can kind of look to see that that's also, again, going to be the type of a relationship where there's trust, and that there's understanding that, like, not every relationship is going to ultimately be a good fit, but here's all the information that you need to be able to make that decision on your own. And it was always very much, guys, we'd love to be in this with you guys. We'd love to participate in helping you in any way that you guys think we could. And here's the ways that we think we might be able to. And when checking on the list, that list, it was very much a very clean fit. But going back to like what the process was like on a day-to-day operational, I mean, our days have always kind of been long. That's just the way that it ultimately is. It's kind of like the PVcase way, we would say at this point, kind of. But it was because of that trust and the rest of the team, where I could say, guys, you guys know what your KPIs are. Do me a favor. I need you guys to just kind of take care of this week. I'm not going to be able to attend this meeting this week. I'm not going to be able to attend this coaching session this week. You guys have been in a number of these previously. You guys know how they're going. So to the head of the SDR team, you know how to handle this. Can you please just take care of that and just report back to me any issues, and kind of being able to have that team that I can trust to be able to do so. And honestly, I think this last experience, we made the announcement to the team, of course, before we made it public, but just shortly after that, I kind of pulled the team together, and I specifically thanked those managing people that ultimately are there to take that burden off of me, and did an amazing job doing so during that time period. Just to thank them, because none of it would have realistically been possible. I certainly would have been insane if I had to continue to try to push on all of that at the same time. There was still that push, but it was not. I didn't have to push with all 10 fingers. I could push with just a couple, and the engine kept moving. And so I think that was really important, that if as a founder you see yourself doing this, make sure you kind of set that precedent and put that in place to be able to enable yourself to kind of take that, because it will take time, and you want to give it the time, because it's a big decision. It's a major commitment, and like we look at our company as kind of like an extended family, and like we welcomed our first investors in as family, and continue to grow as a family, and welcoming Peter and Elephant in as a family. Like, it was an important decision as to making the right call and the right decision, and that wasn't going to happen without giving it 100% of our attention. It's a good thing that we have the ability to have 200% attention by just working more hours.
Yeah, I agree, and I think, gentlemen, we are kind of out of time. We allocated 1 hour for the chat, and I think time flies, right? It's I couldn't believe it. We're approaching the limit. Maybe for like the last touch point before we say bye to the audience, the personal kind of growth, or personal stories, because you like it or not, everything is so circumstantial. Instagram for David and Doug, right? Kind of me and David go way back, and the circumstances we met was very, very. We met completely in a different circumstance, and then we kind of kept in touch. And then David came with this idea, right? We were consulting back then, I think, Detra with sales processes and so on. Then Contrarian co-investor in the round, also kind of with David, had a different path that actually is connected. And then Peter, also kind of an elephant, got in touch because he was looking also in some of our portfolio companies before. And if you will, how you can have a best plan, right? You can have a best plan, best Excel in the world, best so on. But circumstances are also so important. Sometimes it's casual, and it's important to be open, look at this, and identify opportunity when it comes. If you take this note, right? How do you think growing business like linearly, executing heads down, versus keeping open, smiling a bit, and recognizing that it's people, right? It's people. It's not like any sales is not going to happen. You need people that are doing business. So maybe if you could reflect a bit, Peter, David, and Doug, on this kind of long talk.
Maybe I can start. I think for me personally, all these 3 years changed my mindset a lot on this, opportunity and growth, like personally and with the company. But what I realized the most, that I really like to work with people that I like, or they have the same mindset that I have. And I think that played really well. And this is reflected to Arvida's comment about being open and taking on these opportunities. So I think that was the change in my mindset the last, let's say, couple of years.
Yeah, I would say I thought that was well said, Arvidas. I think a lot of circumstances led us to this point. Luck certainly, luck in hindsight, it certainly played a role. I think in my involvement, at least in the business, or I should say Elephant's involvement, at least in the business, is the result of some luck and some circumstances, which we don't forget. I would also say, though, that I'm sure there's been luck in the operations of the business, and things have kind of rolled David and Doug's way in some respect. It's the combination of luck and literally running through walls for things that I think has brought the company to this point. So it's a combination of hard work, tons and tons of hard work, and long hours, which I can attest to, and late night calls after putting the kids to bed. But that combined with circumstances is a winning combination. So it's both of those things.
And I think I kind of continuing on that same idea that like things just kind of happen for a reason, right? And they may not seem super amazing at that point in time, but they ultimately always lead to something better. And like I can think of, like, let's say three particular instances that kind of all lead to this moment, right? And so I met my wife as a result of a flat tire. I met Davidus through Instagram, through my wife's Instagram. Moved to Lithuania because my wife was working in New York and was laid off after the financial crisis, and that's what made us move to Lithuania, and that's how we met Davidus. And so 3 just totally random, not great things ultimately led to this amazing company, this amazing experience, and this just everything happens for a reason, and you just got to kind of roll with it. And ultimately it's relationships, always number 1, and that's it. And then from there, customers will be happy if you have a good relationship. Companies like to do business because they're people, and people like to do business what they like. We like to do business here in the office, work with people that we like. I think we have a great company corporate environment because we kind of build this internal environment where we hire the right people that are ultimately kind of not just are great at doing what it is that we're hiring them to do, but they also kind of fit that personality profile that matches up and that it will mesh well with the team. And ultimately that makes our lives way easier. And so I think that's kind of where I would conclude on this at that point.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think that is again some profound moment, because if to kind of summarize a bit, life is not happening to you; life is happening for you, and you can really different people look at different things where they need to focus, or where they focus on, and if you zoom out a bit, it's so easy to see the patterns and so on. I think PVcase is kind of one of this example that initially it was kind of set up as organization with a workflow in mind, with collaboration, transparency, flat organization in mind, that knowingly or not, David, Doug, Adam started like this, right? Toma joined, amazing kind of addition to the team, grew the organization. Everyday business, running everyday business, listening to your clients resulted in a round where Peter joined the story, right? It's Peter and Elephant joining kind of right now our boat, and we will be looking where it heads us, where kind of it leads us. But definitely, a round is a milestone. It's kind of big recognition of everyday business that the kind of PVcase team was doing for the past 3 years. But it's not the end, nor is it's a beginning. It's a process, right? And I think you can, dear audience, if you have any questions, ping us on LinkedIn. I'll try to answer anything or write this here. We'll follow up. And I'd like to say thank you so much for David and Doug and Peter finding time for us and to share it with our audience.
No worries.
Thank you, Arvidas.
Thanks, Arvidas.
Thank you very much.
Good. And see you in next sessions.
Excellent.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.